These agreements require employees of the government of Canada that access these documents to sign confidentiality agreements. And why is that? Why is there much more redactions, as my colleague said,
why is
in
that?
these documents than in other documents?
Tell us, Anthony.
It's because these documents were signed at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was desperate for vaccines, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production, do testing in an unprecedented way, in a way they normally don't do it. So these companies were exposed to way higher liability, putting their products on the market than they normally would, because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market. They did it all in less than a year.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that's why these companies said, if I'm going to deliver you this product that I haven't tested in my normal way, I want to have different conditions. And with all countries around the world competing with each other to get these, the countries had less leverage than they normally do. For example, if we were entering into flu vaccine contracts or monkeypox contracts or other things that were normally available, this would be a different issue. But these are already signed. They were signed at a time the government didn't have that leverage in negotiations. We just wanted to sign as many vaccine contracts with as many producers as possible because Canadians were desperate for vaccines. And in the end, it worked out. We got vaccines, and we were one of the countries that got to vaccinate everybody the fastest.
I'm going to start this off periodically just so that the world can hear that clip. That's Anthony Housefather. He's a member of the Liberal Party for Procurements or some I don't know, ministry. I don't know what his title is. I don't really care. We can look it up afterwards. That's Anthony Housefather, member of Canadian Parliament, explaining eloquently, thoughtfully, in meticulous detail, what the Canadian government did to Canadian citizens and what governments across the world did to their citizens. The funny thing about this clip, I've commented on this clip and I've tweeted it out multiple times. And I still, for some reason, can't easily seem to find my tweets with this clip in it. I wanted to play it once intact, or at least that 1.5-minute section intact, originally retweeted by True North. Everybody has to understand what the hell Anthony Housefather just said right there. This is the equivalent of Time magazine explaining how they didn't rig the election, they fortified it. How they didn't subvert democracy, they preserved it. It wasn't election fraud. It was a secret cabal of well-funded individuals working across platforms to control the flow of information, change the rules and laws. What Time magazine described in its article as election fortification is exactly what most people would consider election rigging. What Anthony Housefather has just testified to here is nothing short of explaining how the people were experimented on and how these pharma companies knew the inherent risks of bringing their product to market in the absence of proper production, manufacturing. We've seen recall after recall, in the absence of proper testing. And they said, well, we were so desperate for this vaccine because we had whipped up a population into a frenzy over 2+ years to let them think the only way out of this is with a vaccine. Give us anything to shut them up because we've whipped them up into such a frenzy. Well, we can't give this to them because we haven't tested it properly. We don't really have, oversight for production. We're not doing it unless you immunize us. And that is somehow supposed to explain away as opposed to incriminate the government. Let's listen to this one more time. And I'm going to snip this. I'm going to clip this so that everybody can understand exactly what the government knowingly did to the people.
These agreements require employees of the government of Canada that access these documents to sign confidentiality agreements.
He's talking about confidentiality agreements signed between government and government employees so that they would not disclose to the public what they were seeing in the documentation that they would be consulting in the day-to-day of their government employment.
And why is that?
Why is that,
Why
Anthony?
is there much more redactions, as my colleague said?
Because when they asked for this documentation under like the Canadian equivalent of a FOIA request, it was highly redacted. Why is it redacted, Anthony? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because
in these documents than in other documents. It's because these documents were signed at the beginning of the pandemic.
That's not an explanation for why they were redacted. That's just a context. But keep going. Keep digging your hole, Anthony.
When everybody was desperate for vaccines.
Everyone was desperate.
When companies were being told to rush vaccine production.
Rush vaccine production. Google COVID-19 vaccine recalls. AstraZeneca had one. I don't want to make a mistake as to which recalled millions and millions of doses of vaccines. Why? Because the manufacturing was rushed. Not my words. Anthony Housefather's words. Production was rushed.
Do testing in an unprecedented way.
Unprecedented way, meaning not normal testing. Hey, oh yeah, no, they're not experimental because we've done 2 years of testing. There is no way to rush 10 years of safety data. There's no way to rush it unless you're an idiot and you think there's a way to rush 10 years of safety data.
In a way they normally don't do it. So these companies were exposed to way higher liability, putting their products on the market than they normally would.
Can you believe?
Because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market. They did it all in less than a year.
Well, they did years of safety testing in a year. Do you understand what he just admitted here? They would not bring their products to market because of increased liability due to rushing of every aspect of the development. This is a member of Canadian government.
So that's why these companies said, if I'm going to deliver you this product that I haven't tested in my normal way,
i.e., oh no, what did I just do? i.e., haven't tested.
These agreements
haven't tested in my normal way
because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market. They did it all in less than a year.
It's amazing. They did years of testing in a year. It's amazing. It's amazing. No questions.
So that's why these companies said, if I'm going to deliver you this product that I haven't tested in my normal way.
In my normal way, meaning the way that has always been traditionally acceptable for vaccines, for any medication.
I want to have different conditions.
Different conditions. Immunity from liability. If I'm going to sell you shit, I don't want to be sued when people get sick from my shit that I sold you because I rushed every aspect of this. Because you whipped up the population to a frenzy where they were convinced the only thing that was going to get them out of this was a product, even if it was improperly tested shit.
And with all countries around the world competing with each other to get these, the countries had less leverage than they normally do. For example, if we were entering into flu vaccine contracts or monkeypox contracts.
Less leverage. Do you know what that is another synonym for? Getting exploited. Well, I don't have leverage, so I have to accept a shitty bargain because I don't have leverage to negotiate a stronger agreement with you. That is this guy right now, Anthony Housefather, saying the government didn't have the leverage to negotiate a good contract for their citizens. So what did they do? They gave a good goddamn contract to the pharma companies.
Or other things that were normally available. This would be a different issue. But these are already signed. They were signed at a time the government didn't have that leverage in negotiations. We just wanted to sign as many vaccines.
We just wanted to sign anything.
Contracts with as many producers as possible.
Immunize them. We just wanted to sign anything. Stick it in your arms. Roll up your sleeves.
Because Canadians were desperate for vaccines. And in the end, it worked out. We got vaccines and we were one of the countries who got to vaccinate everything.
In the end, it worked out. We got something. It's criminal, in my humble opinion. Nothing shy of it. Oh, I wanted to show you something about that tweet. No. So that tweet was in response to somebody criticizing me for saying, Viva, you referred to the jab as a experimental gene therapy that had not been properly tested. And I replied with, yeah, because the NIH on its website refers to it as an experimental vaccine. Because Anthony Housefather, Canadian member of Parliament, admitted it wasn't properly tested. Gene therapy. All right, we'll debate on that. Because the fact checks on whether or not the COVID jab is gene therapy say it's not gene therapy because it wasn't designed to modify your genes. Didn't say it didn't. And I don't really know, it didn't say it didn't modify whatever, do whatever it is that gene therapies do. It said it's not gene therapy because it wasn't designed to do it. Semantics are very important, especially when you're coming from the wordsmiths of the devil fact checkers. I bet you're all wishing that I'd started with a Justin Trudeau clip, eh? I should have made sure that we were currently live on all platforms before we're going that heavily into the intro rant. We're live everywhere. Good. We are on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And the way everybody should understand this works, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I have exclusivity with Rumble. And so what I do is I stay on YouTube and Rumble for a bit, go over to Rumble exclusively with Locals, and then we actually end on Rumbles, and we have a Locals after party where I take some of the tips, take some questions in Locals, and we have our wonderful above average community. So that's the order of things. For everybody who's wondering, Standard disclaimers: no medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. I don't give election. I don't give any of this advice. I lay out what I think is facts. And if I'm wrong, I expect people to say, Viva, you made a mistake here. And Viva being Viva, I'm talking to myself in the third person. Me being who I am, I'm more interested in understanding right than being right. I will correct myself if ever I make a mistake. Informed consent, nothing more to be said. Seize the day. Good to see you here. All right, standard disclaimers: no medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. Those wonderful things that you see, those highlighted super chats, YouTube takes 30% of those. So for that, a $5 chat, $10 chat, YouTube takes $3 out of. Rumble has these things called Rumble rants. Rumble ordinarily takes 20%, but for the rest of 2023 is taking 0%. So 100% goes to the creator. Afterwards, they'll go back to taking the 20%, but better for the creator, better to support a platform that actually supports free speech. You can go to Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We have a massive, wild, wonderful, above average community. You can support for $7 a month, $70 a year if you so choose. Some people actually choose to support for more than that. Not everybody support. We have a massive membership, which is a non-supporting community of 107,000. There's a lot of stuff out there for everybody, and then there is some stuff behind a paywall for those who choose to support the channel. So there's that. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. You can go to vivafry.com and get some merch. Okay, let me vent a little bit. First of all, everybody in the chat right now, is it better like this? Lighting, pay attention, hold on. Or like this? Let the contrast settle a little bit. Better before or better now? 1 for now, 2 for before. Which one's better? This is 1. 2 is this. Which one is better? 1 or 2? Yellow light before. The first. Okay, good. Yeah, the headlight coming down from these flipping, what are they called? Pod lights. Really, they really highlight my nose and forehead. All right, we'll wait for the jokes later. Oh no, it looks evenly split between 1 and 2. You know what? It doesn't matter. If it's not clear cut, we'll leave it like this. It looks a little more natural. Okay, so we got some stuff to talk about today. Hunter Biden, corruption in your face. They don't care. It's a mark of their superiority, the degree to which they can knowingly, brazenly rub their corruption in your face. The Hunter Biden sweetheart deal, which now has revealed, like my grandmother, once upon a time, when my father got pulled over, I won't say for what, he got pulled over. And as the cops are giving him a hard time, my grandmother's in the back and she's like, my son's a good boy, officers. Everybody thinks their son is a good child. And, oftentimes they are. But that doesn't mean that they haven't done things that are wrong. Joe Biden, once upon a time, said, my son's done nothing wrong. Well, unfortunately, now that you've had to plead, even if it's a diversion agreement, you've had to plead, you've done something wrong. And it's a joke. But now it's, it has to go from Biden saying, my son's done nothing wrong. He's a good boy to, okay, he's done some wrong things, but, he's paid his price. But when it comes to his business dealings, wait until you see the in your face, they are pissing on you and calling it rain, pivot that the government now has to do, that Biden has to do. Let me see this. Okay, here. It went from, I've never discussed my son's business dealings, and now it's going to go to, I'm not in business with my son. We'll get there. Pedro Gonzalez, he was on the channel. We had a good sidebar. My opinion of Pedro for his intellectual input to the world hasn't changed. Breitbart came out with an expose, my goodness, and it's flipping long, going through, apparently private messages from Telegram groups and whatever were disclosed. And they don't make Pedro Gonzalez look very good. And then there's some discussion to be had about that, his response, and where this is going to go. But first, what we're going to do on both the Rumble and YouTube is we're going to talk about Canada. We're going to talk about Canada because tomorrow my guest, let me just make sure that I can not screw up here. Hold on just 1 second. Don't want to make a mistake in terms of, yes, tomorrow the guest is Sheila Annette Lewis, coming on at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Sheila, and I'm going to give everybody this Give, Send, Go, which is her fundraiser. Sheila has been denied an organ transplant because she is not complied with Alberta protocol to be COVID jabbed. and has therefore been taken off an organ donor list. Apparently there's a gag order on the organ, on the names of the doctors and the names of the hospital, which I couldn't violate if I wanted to because I don't know them. The Canadian courts have basically issued this woman a death sentence. Now, her give, send, go is here because apparently what they're going to try to do is go to Texas to get this organ transplant, and they need to raise upwards of $1 million Canadian, so 600,000 US or 700,000 US. Apparently, it's like 75,000 for the initial test to see if the compatibility will work, and then the procedure itself is like upwards of $1 million. I've donated, and I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm doing that to say that I'm not sharing this around without having put my own, financial skin in the game, and I'm going to do everything I can to raise awareness for this absolutely shocking injustice, and to raise funds so that at the end of this, so that Sheila may find life in this. She's coming on tomorrow at 1:00. We're going to talk about that article in a few minutes. But first, into the show now, people. Into the show. I still don't get used to saying into the show. You remember that member of provincial parliament, Joel Harden, who lied about having been the victim of a hate crime at a protest in Ottawa that was live streamed basically beginning to end, and nobody saw evidence of Joel Harden getting punched in the face by the anti-trans right-wing mob. And then when it came out that in fact we saw video footage of him banging himself in the face with his own bullhorn, he then pivoted and said, no, yeah, I didn't get punched in the face. Someone hit my bullhorn and then it went into my face. And he lied. City council people lied. I forget, Ariel Trotsky or whatever lied. They lied. They were called out in their lie. I did a video breakdown analysis fleshing out the lies, the backtracking, the video evidence, his interview that he gave on some Toronto daytime show, admitting that he lied, and then reaffirming that he got punched in the face. No, it was a hit, but it hit my bullhorn, and I separated two fighting women pulling each other at the hair, and I got in between, and I'm 6'1", and I stood up and broke them apart like fighting rabid raccoons. Hold up. He's a liar through and through. The evidence is out there. I did a video breaking it down. It was under manual review for monetization for 2 weeks, only to be confirmed not suitable for advertisers. Well, Kareem Assad, who has, I don't know if she's become public enemy number one on the left now as well, but the right once upon a time said Kareem is a lefty, don't trust her. The left says she's colluding, she's conspiring with the right. I think she's probably detested to some extent on both sides. I haven't found anything to criticize her about. Her cameraman caught up with Joel Harden, and he continued to repeat the lie.
Do you have any comment on Dina Sharif? Do you approve of? She was dragging some lady's hair, and Dr. Nilly was right there.
That I broke up. You talking about that?
I don't think so.
You talking about the woman grabbing the other one by the hair, and I got in the middle of them, and this is the woman who punched the megaphone in my face. You talking about that?
Oh, megaphone in my face?
Do you have any comment?
There is no video footage of Joel Harden breaking up a fight between two women pulling each other by the hair. There is video evidence of two women fighting, pulling each other by the hair. I don't know who they are, and I'm not going to name anybody, even though I maybe know who they are. Doesn't matter. There's video evidence of Joel Harden not being present when two women were fighting, pulling each other at the hair. He continues to repeat the lie. Canadian media has said nothing, absolutely nothing. I don't know that Yahoo ever updated their article, their initial article where they repeated as fact that Joel Harden was assaulted. They then said, we're gonna follow up this story, and never followed up as far as I know. Media says nothing. Canadian government subsidized media says nothing. Had it been an actual incident, you would not have heard the end of it. They would have legislated rules about this. They would have called it Harden's Law. They would have called it the Harden way. So that was it. That's the intro of Joel Harden. The only update, he's going to get away with it. This is the state of Canadian politics. A Canadian member of provincial parliament can get up, lie to your face. Other government officials, city councilmen, can repeat the lie, change their story to fit the truth as the truth comes out. No repercussions. And the government media is just that, government media, propagandist media, who will not call out the lie. But had it been true, you would have had Harden's Law outlawing protest outside or within the vicinity of schools. All right. People should not forget about that either. Now, so that's Joel Harden. He will always be a liar, a confirmed liar. And the thing is this, I don't even know if he's ashamed of himself. Like I've said before, and I think it's kind of an insightful observation. You cannot be ashamed if you have no pride. Like someone with no pride can feel no shame. But then if you feel no pride, you necessarily have to, I'm an idiot. Forget it. Doesn't matter. Joel Harden is a liar. He should be ashamed of himself. He should be called out day in and day out for this, lying to the people. He blocked me on Twitter, by the way, but that much I understand. And the Canadian propagandist media should be ashamed of themselves for not calling Joel Harden out and giving this story the international light that it deserved. All right, enough with Joel Harden. Now, the injustice of all injustices, which we're going to explore tomorrow with the actual victim of this injustice. Alberta Court of Appeal rejects unvaccinated woman's request to get back on transplant list. Now, if you were on our locals community, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, I shared the judgment on our community tab yesterday with this article. It's tedious to go through these decisions that review administrative procedures. The bottom line to take away from all of this is that a lower court judge agreed with the protocol that had been implemented to determine who is eligible or who should be considered for organ transplant. They said, look, it's not a government entity. They're not abiding by government protocol or dictates. So somehow the charter doesn't apply. I may or may not have a disagreement with that, but whatever. The doctors are experts. They make up their own criteria. I suspect if I should steel man this in the same way, they might not put on for a lung transplant someone who's still a chronic smoker because, it would waste the lung in theory. I don't know. I don't even know if that's true. But in the same way, I suspect they might say, well, chronic alcoholic not getting any treatment, we're not going to give him another liver. He's just going to kill that liver too. So you're not eligible. Chronic smoker, hard, I can imagine. They're now saying, well, we've decided that being jabbed against the Rona with this jab is a requirement for organ transplants. And the courts have basically said, it's not a charter violation because it's not a government protocol, and we're not in a position to second guess the experts. This is from November 8, 2022. This is the original appeals decision affirming the lower court's decision, and the Supreme Court in signing Sheila's death sentence. And I'm saying that hyperbolically because God willing, touch wood, we'll be able to raise the funds. She'll be able to get the procedure that she needs in the States. I don't want to reveal any more information that I'm not sure I'm allowed to reveal. This is the article from back in November 2022. Alberta Appeal Court rejects unvaccinated woman's request to get back on transplant list. The decision upholds a lower court's findings. Imagine, at least they're reporting on it. They should be, okay. A terminally ill woman's bid to be re-added to a transplant list she was removed from for refusing a COVID-19 vaccine has been rejected by Alberta's highest court. You've got the Queen's Bench or the King's Bench now, but some provinces have the Supreme Court, but that's the lower level. Then you got your Court of Appeals, and then you have your Supreme Court of Canada. Alberta transplant doctors have made getting the vaccine mandatory for eligibility, but Annette Lewis refuses to be immunized from COVID-19. She refuses. There is a court-ordered publication ban that covers the organ Lewis is seeking for a transplant for, the names of the doctors, and the hospital's name and location. You won't catch me breaking that ban, which is why I'm pulling stuff from public articles. This is one of those cases where I could understand, but I still don't agree with the publication ban. This level of inhumane injustice is enough to push good people to do bad things. When you understand that we're living in a society where doctors, knowing there's not even a vaccine mandate in the province anymore, knowing that we can have capricious, unscientific, politicized decisions coming from the people who we're supposed to trust with our lives. And they could say, get the jab if you want an organ, or we're going to let you die. They know this. She's got whatever degenerative disease. She will die without the organ transplant. She will die. And they are saying, we're going to let you die because you will not abide by what we're saying. You will not bend the knee. I don't know. You will not do as we say. We will let you die. The lower court said, who are we to intervene? The Court of Appeal said, who are we to intervene? And the Supreme Court said, we're not intervening. Earlier this year, the Court of King's Bench, Joel Belzil, found that the charter has no application when it comes to COVID-19 requirement. Oh. In October, Lewis took her case to the Court of Appeals of Alberta. Her lawyer argued the appellate court step in, arguing the vaccine requirement was causing Lewis's death by removing the chance for a transplant and the possibility that it would save her life. Lawyers for Alberta Health Services. This is the same Alberta Health Services that visited Artur Pawlowski's church. They've been called other names other than AHS. And the doctors argue that the decision has been made by a clinical team that must make determinations about who is most in need, as well as who has the best prospect of survival, citing the nearly 40% death rate of transplant patients who contracted COVID before the vaccines were available. Well, that sounds like a wildly outdated statistic. And by the way, kicker to all of this, Sheila has natural antibodies indicating a prior infection or at least natural immunity. Kicker, doctors. The appeal court upheld Belzil's original finding, noting that medical decisions about scarce resources, such as organ donors, are difficult but must be made. In this case, the charter does not apply the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Does not apply to the respondents' exercise of clinical judgments in formulating preconditions to organ transplant, including requiring vaccination and against COVID-19 in the wake of the pandemic, the appeals judges found. Despite deciding that the charter does not apply in this case, the court decided, for the sake of argument, to also provide an opinion on what would happen if the charter did apply, and found that none of her arguments would prevail. It doesn't apply, but even if it did, it wouldn't change anything. Go home and die. Or just take the shot. Just say, I love Big Brother. Just say that 2 + 2 = 5. Lewis had asserted that being denied a place on the transplant list I lost something here. Lewis had asserted that being denied a place on the transplant list, her rights to life, liberty, and security were being violated, as was her freedom of conscience. The court denied on all of those grounds, noting its rejection of the right to life argument, that while patients have the right to make decisions such as declining a vaccine, but that decision can result in serious risks or consequences. You have the freedom to choose to die. It is one thing to assert that the state is unlawfully prohibiting one from accessing life-saving treatment. It is quite another for Ms. Lewis to selectively choose which treatment criteria she will comply with. Oh, really? Lewis also argued that she was being discriminated against and urged the court to find that medical status should be protected. The court declined to do so, finding that what Lewis was actually arguing for was a finding of discrimination on the basis of COVID-19 vaccination status. Ms. Lewis' COVID-19 vaccination status is not who she is, the decision reads. Oh. It is not an immutable characteristic, nor is it one that is changeable only at unacceptable cost to personal dignity. Oh, really? Her choice not to get vaccinated against COVID-19 is just that, a choice. That's our Canadian judicial system, people. Publication ban. Because they understand what that publication ban also tacitly admits. It tacitly admits that the decision is so fundamentally unjust, so shocking to the conscience, that the people making it are not willing to publicly stand by it. That the court acknowledges that so many people would be outraged by this fundamentally disgusting, unscientific, shocking decision that harassment might ensue for those who are behind this decision-making process. The gag order, although protective in nature, is quite clearly protecting against what most people feel to be an egregious injustice. And that's that. So that's where it stands. Supreme Court, let me just see if I think I pulled that article up here. Supreme Court won't hear the Alberta case. This is more recent. This is June 9th. Annette Lewis argues that the charter rights were violated by the policy. Supreme Court of Canada will not hear the appeal of an Alberta woman who was unwilling to get vaccinated in order to get life-saving organ transplant. Do you imagine, like, they'll put you to death, but they will not save your life unless you get vaccinated. Okay, she was diagnosed with a terminal disease in 2018. She would not survive unless she received an organ transplant. 2020, she was placed on a list. Okay, this is all just a summary. Lewis recently filed a separate legal action against the AHS, an Alberta hospital, and transplant doctors. There's a publication ban on the doctors' identities, the organ involved, and the location of the hospital, the transplant program. Lewis is arguing negligence in the decision to remove her from the high-priority transplant list, saying it amounts to medical malpractice. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, JCCF, had them on. Awesome people. Said Lewis will ask the court at an upcoming injunction hearing to grant an immediate reinstatement of the transplant list pending the... I mean, the funny thing is, who the hell would even want these doctors operating on you at the end of the day? Oh, yeah, okay, we'll do it. Imagine compelling these doctors who were ready to let you die perform life-saving surgery on you. It might be even past the point of any potential trust to begin with. Sheila's coming on tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Did I share the Give Send Go? Did I say GoFundMe before? I hope I didn't. The Go F me. Here's her Give Send Go. It's a wild number. It's a wild number that she has to raise. Okay. It's a wild number. So share it away. If you can afford to give it, and it's an amazing thing. The government is supposed to do this. Sheila has paid into a healthcare system that is supposed to do this. Now she's got to rely on the kindness of strangers to save her life. Okay. That's it. That's enough. I tell you, I don't cry out of a sadness. I cry out of frustration when I do, sometimes out of sadness. All right, let's mosey on over to the Rumble side. Because we're moving on up. Oh, hold on. Let's take. I'm going to share the link, and I'm just going to see if we have any Rumble rants to read on both platforms before I go over it. Oh, we got. Okay. By the way, to my one subscriber on Twitter, I set up the subscription, and it was intended to be not something of a joke, like a ridiculous subscription. It was just a joke to say, like, come support us at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I got one subscriber. If you subscribe by accident, I will not be insulted if you unsubscribe. All right, let me just read some of these Rumble. That's right. I just got my own voice behind them. That was confusing. All right, let's read some of these. Will not be insulted if you unsubscribe. Jesus. Okay, here we go, people. Starting from the proper bottom up. Ginger Ninja 1776. I watched A Soldier's Journey Home. I didn't cry during it, partly because the main character, the soldier, was so damn. He did not feel bad for himself. That was what I mean. It was like he did not pull or attempt to like pull on heartstrings. The dude has a spirit that is inspiring. Everybody, Ginger Ninja, if you remember the name, I forget the name of the exact episode. A Soldier's Journey Home. They built a house for this wounded veteran in 2 weeks during COVID. Beautiful, inspirational. I also supported their work as well. Ginger Ninja 1776. It's maddening. U.S. non-confrontational folk getting railroaded and bludgeoned for refusing to wear masks and refuse the shot. I wasn't allowed at Thanksgiving, fired from my job, 1 of 2, and I'll get to the second one. There's 2 of 2, but now they get to live in peace. When they should be publicly berated in the same way I was publicly berated. But here we are, the nicer guys who are letting them get away with their actions. Cod tongues. I've never had it. I heard they're delicious. Hey, Viva, do you allow for a little self-promotion here? If yes, a peek at my election fraud picture book. Not only, look, I can't control super chats, and it has proven to be probably among the most effective marketing tactics of all time. Heart Tackle. For $10, you get 5,000 people to see it right now. I mean, how amazing is that? So absolutely not. Put the link in there. I don't know anything about your book. I would call it election fornification picture book. But what do I know? Cod Tongues, go check it out, people. The link is there. Cod Tongues says, if no, just say the word and I will cease and desist. No, hey, I'm not going to read a wildly offensive, insulting super chat or Rumble rant unless I read it by accident before knowing what it says. But dude, super chats and Rumble rants, they're a great, cheap way for self-promote. How many people do we have watching now? We have 4,700 here, and we've got 700. That's 5,500 people, eyeballs on your product for $10. It's a great way to do it. All right. Yada, yada. Ginger Ninja, we got to that one. Sheskos says Putin is losing war in Iraq as per Biden. Good to know, right? Shisko says, my understanding, new protocol in Canada, now organs donated unless you officially declare you don't want to donate, which is the reverse of previous. This is here now or in the works of being here. Shisko's, I talked about that the other day. It's 2 provinces right now, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, that have a presumption of tissue donation unless you opt out. The law just came into effect in Nova Scotia. Which one? It was Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. It was called the Avery's Law, named after a 16-year-old kid or a young kid who died in a car accident. The parents wanted to donate his organs, but they didn't have the system in place to do it. How this law, presuming organ donation, responds to that problem, anybody's guess. It's a disgusting. I sign my organ donor card. I support organ donation. Presumption of donation is wildly shocking and will lend itself to wild abuses. And they're not even that hard to see, because if you read the law, the person not only can't be dead, because from what I understand, you can't really be dead to donate organs, because the body produces chemicals in death that make the organs not, lacking oxygen, whatever. A coroner can decide you're close enough to death and make the decision to harvest your tissues, your organs. Homeless people, elderly people with no family fighting for them in the ER, black markets, or demand. You're close enough to death. Mistakes. It's so rife with potential abuse. It's inhumane. And I mean, set aside religious objections. It might be selfish for someone to not want to donate their organs in death. Okay. Presumption of it. It's obscene. It's obscene, and especially since the law says the coroner can determine that you're close enough to death to harvest your organs. So they won't ask if you're unvaccinated when they come to harvest your organs, by the way. Guarantee you that. All right, so that's that. Let's move over to Rumble right now, and we're going to get onto the other good stuff. And just so you know, I'm not going to lambaste or even though some people might want me to, I'm not going to, what's the word? Defenestrate Gonzalez. I actually would like to have him back on the channel. I'd like to talk about it because, we'll get to it. But this is not a public humiliation in the absence of. We're just going to go through and talk about some issues that are actually issues to discuss in the drama. All right. All that to say, right now, we are ending on YouTube. We're going to go over to Rumble. And if you want to go over to Locals, you can go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. An above average live stream and chat is going on there right now. We're moving from YouTube in 3, 2,